getting started a few minutes late, but I appreciate your patience and your being here. And I know other people who would like to know, listen in but can't be here have got the ability to watch live. Anybody that you want to share with, they can then go on BevCam's website and watch it later if somebody can't do either. So I'm Mike Cahill. I'm your mayor. We've got our, you recognize, I think, most everybody locally, but let me just introduce Police Chief Falasher, Traffic Sergeant Henneberry. In the front row is our State Representative Paracella, State Senator Lovely, and Ward 1 City Councilor Rotundo. So want to share with you a couple of thoughts, and then we can go right to some commentary and questions. First, taking some of the input that we got at the meeting over at the school a few weeks ago, we are going to, after the Thanksgiving weekend, our police department are going to go out and they're going to try what they did for a few days earlier on this fall. They're going to try 7:30 a.m. to 8:15 a.m., closing Kernwood Heights to traffic coming from Bridge. And so that, again, I don't know how long. We're going to try it and see how it goes. We know that there will be impacts to other streets because people who can't come up that way will go somewhere. We're going to try to have presence and enforcement in those other streets to make sure people drive safely as they're moving in a different, in a different pattern. And hopefully this will make a positive difference for the neighborhood and for, families and kids going to and from school. That'll be in the morning, 7:30 to 8:15. I don't know how long it'll continue. If it is working and it's generally well received by the whole of the neighborhood, then we'd probably continue it. We're going to try it out, okay? Second, thanks to Representative Paracella and Senator Lovely, in the recent economic development bill that the legislature passed and the governor signed into law, there's a $100,000 earmark for what are the exact, is it traffic mitigation for the neighborhood as a result of the bridge closure. We've talked about it internally, and we're gonna use a significant chunk of that money, maybe up to all of it, over a couple of years to help support a third traffic patrol officer. So we have 2 full-time traffic positions, and then we have Sergeant who's in charge of the traffic department. We're going to add a third full-time traffic position. Now, it won't be a Ryal side only position, but certainly a lot of the focus already over the last few months has been in Ryal side and in the neighborhoods most directly impacted by all the extra traffic coming from Salem and Peabody over the Kernwood. So we're going to try to put more and more of that focus here. So that money will help to underwrite the cost of that position. We did say at the last meeting that we would put a crosswalk in across Woodland just to the school side of the intersection with Livingston, right? And I was just talking with Commissioner Collins. He'll be here to join us in a few minutes, but we are going to move our sidewalk contractor over there as soon as they're done on Colin Street. He thinks they have a couple more weeks on Colin Street, and so we'll be, trying to get them over there, hoping the weather is with us through the month of December and they can get there. And he thinks it's a couple weeks on site to do the work of really, creating ADA compliant access into the crosswalk from the sidewalk. That's really the work that needs doing there. Trying to think if there's anything else to start with. Councilor? Yes. So there are things that were brought up at the last meeting, and when Commissioner Collins is here in a few minutes, he together with Chief and Sergeant can speak with more expertise on a couple of the things that were raised. Why don't we wait on that, but we'll bring it up. We have asked for email addresses at meetings. Somebody pointed out that, we're asking for them, what are we going to use them for? Apologies to anybody who gave us their email address and we didn't reach out to you prior to this meeting. That was just a ball dropped by me. I apologize for that. We will start to use those. We also are going to use them to try to give you some updates as we go between meetings. We don't have a plan to have a meeting between now and the holidays. So, we will be meeting. We've been chasing a meeting with MassDOT and their engineering consultants, VHB, to bring back some of that conversation around why they show such long timelines for both design and permitting and for construction, and to really kind of dig into that with them and challenge that. Look, it may all hold up in terms of just how long it takes several federal regulatory agencies, several state, and so forth. But we're trying to dig into that with them and push it, and see where there would be abilities to short circuit some of those timelines or to put them together and compress them. So that meeting that we've been looking for with them is happening later next week. So my goal will be to use the emails if you give them to us, and use our own social media to share out some further updates as we go. And with that, any of you have a thought? Should we just turn it over? You want to speak, Councilor? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for everyone for coming here, and I've been hearing of everyone so far. A couple of things that I have concerns with, and I have talked with the mayor about it, is specifically the MassDOT traffic information that they gave us, the study. And if anyone was able to go on and see the information, it's a lot of numbers, a lot of volume. We know there's a lot of volume. I don't know what we're doing with the volume numbers, and I think that's something that I've had people asking me as well, is it's not comprehensive enough, and what can we do to move that information? Or can MassDOT do another comprehensive study to see if there's something that can or cannot be done? I mean, the fact is, there may be nothing that can be done with some of these studies, but it's just not enough information to kind of digest. I know I talk with Sergeant Henneberry probably more than he wants to talk with me, but the information that he's been able to provide to me, as well as me providing to the constituents, specifically with the speeding on Woodland Ave, Kernwood Heights. Listen, I live on Kernwood Ave. I moved here 27 years ago, and I knew moving there that I was living on a busy street. Kernwood Heights, you moved there knowing that, yes, you're going to have traffic in the morning. You're going to deal with the afternoon traffic for school if you're home from work. But the fact is, you're experience the same traffic that I experience on a daily basis. The things that I'm hearing is the aggression from the drivers. They're driving on your tails. They're appearing to speed down the hill or up the hill. I know Sergeant Henneberry and I sat on the hill one day for about an hour, just briefly talking with some of the neighbors, and what perceived to be speeding going down the hill. In fact, there was only one car that was going over 30 miles, but all the other ones were within reason. And we asked one of the neighbors, what did it appear to be? And she was 31, 32 miles, and it was 27 miles. Now, I'm not saying that that's not fast on Kernwood Heights. It is. It's crest over the street, over it, coming downwards. Same thing on Woodland. All the data that Sergeant Henneberry has, in fact, been collecting for us is showing a lot of this information, that a lot of the speeding is perception, not reality. There is a lot of volume as well. So the volume is what's giving that. It's constant speeding, constant speeding, constant speeding. Again, living on a street that you moved into years ago or even recently before the bridge shut down, you didn't move there thinking that you were going to have such an influx of traffic. The volume's incredible. Kernwood Heights has more than, like I said, it's similar to what we get on Kernwood Ave. I know we as a city asked MassDOT to do this comprehensive, or what I thought would be a comprehensive study. I know the mayor had asked for really good information. In my opinion, what MassDOT gave us wasn't perfect. It wasn't good. It showed us a lot of volume that we already knew, but it doesn't give us solutions. So I'm hoping, in response to what a lot of the neighbors are calling, is what can we do with the MassDOT information. But that's pretty much all that I have right now, Mayor. I know they may have a few questions themselves, so thank you.
Thanks, Councilor. And I will say that World Tech is the traffic engineering firm that the city used to do all both the traffic data collection for and the design for the Bridge Street Road construction project. So MassDOT asked them to take a look at the data that they collected. And we just today got on our inboxes, kind of an evaluation of what that data shows from one of the World Tech engineers. Just received it today. We've got to talk with them about it. We'll try to share out, what they find. But what MassDOT did was really, as you said, just collect data. It was just numbers, right? So whether those numbers are going to be able to, show us what's going to make a difference in terms of steps to take. I think that's part of what you might get out of what just hit our inboxes this morning that I haven't had a chance to look through myself, and I know we all need to together. If I could ask Sergeant Henneberry to spend a couple of minutes, you collected yourself data on both Kernwood Heights and Woodland over the last couple months, and if you could share some of what you're thinking after looking at that, and then after that, we'll turn it over to the folks in attendance for any comments or questions. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Henneberry. I'm the traffic supervisor for the police department, and I'm just going to kind of speak in generalities about what we've done since the bridge is closed. The chief's been real supportive of, obviously, having more police officers in the area, more patrols out on the street. And one of the things what we do in the traffic division is we're limited in what we have for resources. So we have one daytime traffic officer, and we have another evening traffic officer. And this is citywide. We're covering the whole entire city with essentially one daytime and one evening officer, in addition to the regular officers that are assigned to the individual wards throughout the city. So we're putting out essentially fires all over town. And what we do is we try to take crash data. Obviously, we want to keep people safe. We want to have enforcement in the locations where people are crashing, people are getting hurt, and then also mitigate some of the speeding complaints, stop signs, red lights, things like that. So back when the bridge closed, and I had spoken with Councilor Rotundo, we were talking about, obviously, the traffic impacts and what's happening in the neighborhoods and the side streets. So we have some traffic equipment we got through a grant actually a few years ago, and that helps us collect data to work a little smarter. So instead of talking to Councilor Rotundo that lives on Kernwood Heights and he says, hey, people are speeding on my street every day, and we send an officer out there and they're not seeing anything, right? It's a kind of a waste of time, so to speak, where we're not impacting traffic or slowing people down when they need to be slowed down. So we use this equipment to collect data, see when the highest probability of violations are occurring, and then we try to deploy the traffic officers to those areas at those given times, right? And that's what we did initially when the bridge was closed. We were looking for Kernwood Heights, Woodland Ave, Livingston, and Bridge Street was done just now, recently, not when the bridge initially closed. So we had some information back from the summer, and we saw obviously a huge increase or a huge amount of volume through these streets, right? And what we do is, again, we've taken these officers, the traffic officers, and tried to deploy them in the areas that show when the greatest need is. Okay, so that's just kind of basically a summary of what we've done with Kernwood Heights, Woodland, Livingston, and there was another one. I apologize. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. We talk almost weekly about some of the stuff that Councilor Rotundo's hearing and seeing from the neighbors. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Yeah.
Sergeant, could you just touch on kind of rough percentages, what you've seen from the data, particularly the one street that you are able to break it down by how many people are going comfortably under the speed limit, how many a little above, and how many more than a little above?
Sure. So off the top of my head, on Woodland Ave, I'll give you a Woodland Ave for an instance because it's something we had talked about recently. Kernwood Heights from, say, like the summer months, because that's when we started doing this in June, July, and August when the bridge was closed. So for instance, Kernwood Heights, I'm going to, like I said, I don't have it in front of me. I have some data over here, but, oh, you got it right there? Thank you. This is Woodland. Okay.
Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I think,
no, it's all right, man.
I think, but just as you're looking at that, for sure, a lot of people are driving appropriately, and,
Right.
and a much smaller number are going over the speed limit by enough that it's that it's unsafe, that if a ticket were written, it would hold up if it were challenged, et cetera, right? The presence, the ability to pull people over when needed certainly matters, and I think that's to your point that our department resources have really focused on that neighborhood. And there's a certain number that are driving, more than 8 to 10 miles over the speed limit. None of us want that in our neighborhood, right? None of us feel good about that if, as it's on our street. And as Sergeant said, there are a number of neighborhoods in the city that are my neighborhood or your neighborhood and somebody else's way to get from this part of town to that part of town. And that's why, the resources keep needing to move around. That give you a chance to look at the numbers?
Yeah, a little bit. So just to kind of reiterate that. So for example, from this recently November 14th to the 21st, on Woodland Ave, there was 12,780 cars that came, and that's just in one direction, right, for that period of time, okay? So the average speed was 20 miles an hour, and the 85th percentile was 27 miles an hour, right? So of course there's going to be cars that are going faster than that with such a high volume. So we try to look at the trends and say, okay, with the vehicles that are being sitting in traffic or queuing in traffic, we're not recording the vehicles that are 10 miles an hour and below, okay? So we're only recording those that are moving through the street. There's no discernible pattern as far as enforcement when we look at this. So I'll look through the times, it'll break it down into 15-minute increments through that 100 pages of data. Kernwood Heights, a little different, we were talking about earlier. Kernwood Heights, we see the highest probability of offenders that are going southbound towards Salem after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So then what we do is we take our afternoon and evening officer, myself, will go over there and we'll try to mitigate the violations for speed, but also the stop signs, because people are driving too fast, they're in a rush, they're coming down the hill, they're not looking, and they're just going. So that's a lot of the stuff that we try to focus on. We take that, and again, this was initial data that we tried to put together back over the summer. Okay, and then this was from this past week, if that's helpful.
Absolutely. That folks, if you have any questions on that in particular, do you have any questions right now? Yes, ma'am. So what about Kernwood Ave or Kernwood Heights? Kernwood Ave. So do you, when you say coming down the hill at Kernwood, are you talking towards Bridge or towards the Kernwood Bridge, down by Upton and that end of town, over almost to Danvers River? Okay. Right.
Okay. Yeah. We don't, so to answer your question, yes, it's an important area, and we had collected some data from 2019 and 2021. Counselor and I had talked about that. Currently, we only have the DOT data that is coming in and out from Salem down towards the Kernwood Bridge. I don't have any data for Kernwood Ave that's current to that area, but that's on the list. Once we go from Woodland, we'll go to Kernwood Heights, Livingston, Bridge, and then back over to Kernwood Ave.
Yes, please.
Are you saying there's 12,000 cars in a week going down Woodland? Is that what I heard?
So the
In one
question,
direction, yeah.
just since she didn't come to the microphone, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Your question was, he said 12,000 plus cars in a week of collecting data, right? And so yes, that is the answer. That was the
Yeah.
number of cars that went. That was up
So
Kernwood Heights?
that was Woodland.
Sorry, that was on Woodland.
Woodland Ave. So from November 14th to the 21st, so from the 14th at 3:30 in the afternoon until the 21st at 9:15 in the morning, it was 12,780 vehicles. That's going from, say, Kernwood Heights towards Green Street, and that, in just that one direction.
So what was it before the bridge cut down? How much traffic between 5, 6, 7 cars?
I don't have that info because we never studied.
Welcome to
We never studied Woodland Ave. So unless the state has information on traffic in that area, we wouldn't have that.
Well, it just seems to me we need to figure out a way to cut down the number of cars going through these streets.
Right. So just, yeah, no, just so anybody watching at home can follow, you first asked what were the total numbers. Sergeant said about 12,000 plus, closer to 13,000 over a week's period, and then you said, oh right, yeah. So the before data that we have is from the traffic study that World Tech did in 2017 or 18. It's been so we have data to compare it to from before COVID, right? And when the bridges both were open, that we can and let's do that. Let's be able to show you those side by side. To your next point of how can we figure out how to get those additional cars off the roads, that's the problem. Because the Hall Whitaker is now closed, those folks coming into Beverly over the Kernwood Bridge, or just from that part of Ryal side, down Kernwood, right, can't turn right on Hall Whitaker to get to downtown and for other purposes. So they are in the neighborhoods, and so, you know, it's more how do we try to ensure safety as people are driving over these streets.
But there's lots of cross streets, and why does it all have to go down Woodland? Can't it be spread out down the street?
So there are lots of cross streets, and why can't everybody take some more of the load? I mean, there are behavioral patterns, right? The reason Kernwood Heights has become the problem is when people were coming down Kernwood, you know this, coming down Kernwood, can't go down to Hall Whitaker, they look up and there's Kernwood Heights, and so there's the most direct line. The MassDOT for people coming in from on 62 from Danvers designated County Way as the detour, correct? Some people will have been using that, but we also know that historically, before the Hall Whitaker closed, those people who were coming in and didn't want to wait on 62, particularly in the morning going to Cummings, right? It's been the case for a number of years that some people coming in would take Bridge, and they would go down County, you know, maybe all the way to County, maybe Northern. We've seen all those patterns. Some of them were coming further down and using Livingstone down to Green. That's been going on already with the regular morning rush into Cummings. So it's just it's that much more when you add the Kernwood traffic, and so it really is, and that's why so much of our focus has been on trying to collect the data to compare it, and though while not waiting for that, just trying to get as much police presence and visibility in the neighborhoods as we can to help try to influence people driving through to do so more safely. Right? Yes, George, do you want to come down to the microphone? Counselor? You want to wrap on this?
Sorry, I'm going to try to speak quickly and get out of here. My feeling on this is that we have a geometry problem on our roads in addition to a behavioral problem. And it seems like we're trying to solve the behavioral problem solely with enforcement when we know that there are intersections that are dangerously designed, right? And a lot of these are going to get redone with the Bridge Street reconstruction, but that's a couple years off. I think there are some sort of short-term things we can do to sort of narrow intersections down. At the last meeting, Ms. Whitelocks over on Eastern was talking about that intersection with Bridge Street and how people are coming down that road. It occurs to me you could do something similar maybe at Kernwood to narrow the intersections. You're decreasing the distance that people have to cross at crosswalks. You're visually narrowing things so that people are more likely to stop at stop signs. And you can solve these behavioral issues, with road design to an extent. Something we're doing downtown on Rantoul. It's something we're going to do on Bridge Street. You can do it with cones, you can do it with paint, you can do it with flex posts. There are a lot of different ways that you can sort of visually change road design in an inexpensive way that, impacts the way that people perceive the street and then the way they move through the street. So I just want to get that kind of out there. George,
am I hearing your focus be somewhat on the approach to and at the intersections, at the stop signs, at the...
Yeah, I mean, so the sergeant mentioned that, sort of behavior at stop signs is an issue, right? If you're saying that the speed coming, down, straights on roads is not unreasonable according to, whatever metrics you're using, I do think that the sort of, adherence to stop signs and frankly to red lights is, maybe not the best. And I know that they've been doing some, I live at the intersection of Bridge and Livingston, so I know that they've been doing some enforcement over there. But yeah, one of the ways that you can sort of slow people down is by, approaching the way that you're constructing those intersections. And I know it's something obviously the city's been doing. Obviously, that's more of like a major reconstruction thing, and I know that costs a lot of money, but I think there are some lower cost ways we could do something similar, and it's something that other communities have done. You can do it mid-block too. I'd love to see something done around Livingston Park, because that's an area a lot of kids, even now, are still riding. Riding after dark, they probably have lights, but they don't, and you see people come buzzing down that street. I see it every day when I'm picking her up from daycare. So, there are, obviously enforcement is one way to address people not driving correctly, but you can't be there all the time, and I recognize that, right? And so the way we construct our streets does have a big impact on the way that people move through the world. So I just want to get that thought out there.
Yeah. Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
I'm going to pick up all these Cheerios, I swear.
Don't, no, don't mind. And thank you much, George. Anybody else on the traffic conversation?
Just to add to that too, Councilor, like I said, Councilor Rotundo and I talk weekly. Reach out to him. I'll be here tonight. I'll give him my contact information. I'm happy to talk about it. I do have hundreds of pages of like raw data that I can kind of simplify and explain as far as what we're seeing, of what we've seen since the summer. So by all means, reach out to either myself or Councilor Rotundo for any other boring traffic statistics. That's about it.
Sure, please.
Quick. Matt from 6 Kernwood Heights. I just want to say thank you for all the efforts that you guys are doing. I really noticed a change in the last few weeks. Sunday, I was outside doing leaves, and my wife said, I didn't really hear you yelling at cars today. I think everything's paying off. You guys are doing great, and I really appreciate the effort. And it also was really helpful when you explained what you have for officers under you and just the whole, what's involved in the police department. Everybody thought, like, so why is there not just a policeman here, Now we know, like, the traffic cops and things like that nature, which, that helped for me understanding. But thank you again. Really appreciate everything.
Thanks very much. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Shauna. I'm on Sunset Drive. I have the opposite problem. We don't have a speeding issue, but it's very hard to get anywhere coming down 62. I was hopeful last time Commissioner Collins mentioned that they've adjusted the light at Echo to be a longer green for 62, but I haven't seen any decrease in traffic or decrease in the time that it takes to get from, my end of 62 anywhere into Beverly. And if there's any way to look at how to move, I know it's a large number of cars, but how to move them faster. It's about 25 minutes to go about 2 miles currently at various parts of the day.
Shauna?
Shauna.
Shauna, when you're talking about the worst of the time, is it during the morning rush?
That's part of it.
Drop off the
yes,
rush
because
traffic.
Ayers is all funneling down. It's actually quicker, and it doesn't help the speeding issue or the traffic issue. But depending on who's bringing, it's quicker to get in the Ayers traffic. So to try that Bridge Street coming down 62 further down,
Right.
But it's putting more cars in that. But it's taking so much longer to get to the same point from where we are on 62. So the morning commute around 7:40 or later, but then also just sometimes very random times of the day, like a 3:30 or, a 5 o'clock. That whole Stop and Shop intersection, even trying to get back that way at times. So I don't know the entire pattern, but.
I'll do my best. Yeah, I mean, obviously the major problem is we doubled the amount of traffic on Elliott Street. We went from 6,000 cars a day in each direction to 12,000 cars a day in each direction. So really what we're just seeing a fundamental breakdown of there's only so many cars you can get through an intersection before before the level of service drops off precipitously. And that's really what you're seeing here. So we did tweak the intersection at Echo, and I've watched it through several commutes back and forth, the evening going out, the morning coming in. And what I'm seeing on the morning coming in is that Echo's not really the problem. It's really, once you get beyond McKay, it's like, piece of cake, because a lot of cars are turning left, and then you got 3 lanes in front of you to go into the Cumming Center, 2 lanes to go straight. So it's really the McKay intersection that's the bottleneck. Yes, every once in a while the Echo intersection goes red, but that's not, beyond that intersection isn't cleared out anyway. So it's, really capacity problem in that stretch where it's all single lane up until you get in front of the Cumming Center. Hopefully, we have all new equipment on order for McKay, Center Drive intersection, and McPherson and Beckford. So all new equipment's on order to replace everything that's out there. And hopefully with some more intelligent equipment, it can react better to the traffic volumes that you see out there. But really, we're just, like any system, it has a point of breakdown. And 12,000 cars a day in each direction is really the point of breakdown where you got a single lane roadway like that, like Elliott Street is. There's no magic bullet. I believe we've made enough tweaks to the Echo intersection that that's not the issue anymore, that we're really still, it's really the McKay intersection. And once you get beyond that, it seems to break free pretty easily. I try to drive it in the morning just to see what everyone else is seeing. And it seems to always keep moving, but it's trundling. It is painful. We realize it is really painful. And, we're desperately seeking any fixes we can employ, but it really just comes down to it's too many cars for a roadway like that to handle. We would need, the only way to really resolve that would be more lanes. So if we, widen 62 somehow, which we really can't do, and add more lanes to it. But that's obviously not a short-term fix either.
Is there a timeline on the smarter technology to streamline the lights?
I don't have a good timeline other than to say 3 or so weeks ago confirmed everything was definitely on order. The last intersection we did, a lot of the components we needed didn't take that long to get. So we're dealing with supply chain stuff like everyone else, and everything's impossible to get. And we never know what's going to be the gating item that we just can't get our hands on. But we did the McPherson intersection. We have at almost all of our intersections, we have loops in the pavement that pick up, they're magnetic sensors essentially. They pick up when the big iron car drives over them. And that's how we tell there's a car coming. And it tells the computer in the control cabinet to start to think about switching directions. And at McPherson, all the loops were broken, so we didn't have any detection. So what happens when you don't have the detection, it just goes onto a timer. And if this direction so much green, then this direction so much green. It has no intelligence. So we did, about a month ago, we did add a camera, which is an interim step. We're going to replace all the equipment there, but we got the camera installed. We got them to get us a camera once the bridge closed. And the things really started to break down. So we added the camera to it, so we have detection at McPherson, and it's helped a little bit. But once we get, we're going to have new computers at each intersection. The computers have the ability to adapt and learn to the traffic patterns, so they're constantly, like, very often when we program an intersection, we do our best guess based on the traffic studies that we do. We put sequence and timing into the computer, and then we let it go. And then once the intersection's built, we watch and we tweak. You've seen that at some of the other intersections that we've done in the last year where we install them, turn the lights on. It's a complete horror show. We know, we watch, we adapt, and we get things fine-tuned. These 4 intersections are going to have computers that can do that process automatically and adapt throughout the course of the year. And if the bridge suddenly opens, it'll adapt to that. Or if Kernwood closes and traffic changes differently, it'll adapt to that. So I don't think it's too far off. I'm hoping a matter of weeks. It's certainly not months away. It's weeks away. So,
Great.
So I'm really hoping, we are all really hoping, because we suffer through it too. We have to get around. Our employees have to get to work. We have to work on Elliott Street. We hope to never dig up Elliott Street. So that'll, so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Shauna. Mike, just one other quick point on that. The technology that has been there since the Route 62 job in the mid-90s, some of it, right? So nobody uses, or we're not using that in the ground technology. Everything is camera mounted and connected to the computer, correct?
Yeah, nowadays, the vast majority of intersections use camera. There are still places for loops, like the brand new intersection we did at the foot of the bridge has a couple of loops installed because of the glare of the sun off of the ocean. It blinds the cameras at certain times of day, and we want to have the loops to back us up. So there are certain applications where it's still used, but for the most part, it's cameras now.
And I know you never want to overpromise, so it's trying to get all that work done and hopeful that the ability that's built into the technology is going to improve things in terms of sequencing, timing, being more intelligent, looking at where the cues are, being able to lengthen out or shorten a piece of the cycle as needed, right?
And also, I mean, each one of these computers, these are all state-of-the-art, and we'll be able to see it remotely. So we'll be able to log in and talk to these things remotely. They gather intelligence for us. We do traffic counts with it. So we are, in fact, the Echo intersection's been in long enough that it was in before the bridge closed and it was in after the bridge closed. So we were able to pull some data out of that, and that's how I know there was 6,000 cars a day in each direction, and now there's 12. That came from the controller at Echo. So we'll have that a lot more intelligence at our fingertips to make, you know, this is the kind of technology we'll employ citywide. So at all intersections, we'll have a lot more to help us with decision making in the future.
And one of them is relevant to the Echo Ave. And I want to make sure it's explained to people how you explained it to me. It was, why can't Echo Ave be put on a blinking mode with the pedestrian functionality so that during the morning rush hour or the afternoon rush hour, if in fact that slows it down slightly, not completely, but it does may slow down a little bit, why can't that be done?
Intersections, all traffic controls we have this ridiculously thick book, the manual and uniform traffic control devices. It's, as engineers, it's what we're held to. It is the law that we're held to. And in the MUTCD, it's, you can't have, well, within the control that we have right now, you can't have both. So it's not possible to have both. You can't put it on flash and have the pedestrian function still work. The controllers are designed that way because the MUTCD doesn't allow it either. You're not supposed to have, on the current version of the regulations, and yes, I know there's a couple of intersections in the city where you see something like this, Bartlett and May and Cabot. There's a really old intersection over there where it's at an intersection where you have a pedestrian signal. You're not supposed to have a pedestrian signal at an intersection. You're either supposed to have a full intersection or not anything, or stop signs and crosswalks like we conventionally have. So it's not allowable per the regulations. I also think that, like I said before, I think we've overcome the need to have that conversation because we've really beat up the timing on that to try to get it so that Echo is not the cause of our woes. And I'm seeing now that, you know, once the traffic gets by McKay, it's like, it's not perfect, but it's almost like, you know, it's such a, you know, as you're driving through there is a breath of fresh air because you get through and you can finally move. You got so many options and different lanes to choose from. But it's really the McKay intersection that's holding us up. And in the evening, it's just, you know, trying to get that many cars down 62 going westbound. And before this happened, we were having traffic, you know, as we all know, that joyous intersection at 128 is back in traffic, back well into Beverly. So it didn't take much to, you know, we doubled the traffic volume going westbound in the evening. And so we took a bad situation and made it really bad.
And then there was one other question that was brought up at the last meeting, and I don't know if you were able to explain is request of putting 2 posted 25-mile-per-hour signs on Woodland on each direction. And I know I've had some conversations that there is some methods that have to be done in order to get to that.
Well,
They can't just be thrown up. We just can't choose to throw up signs because because I asked you to put them up there.
Yeah. So when it comes to our guidebook, the manual and uniform traffic control devices, and it is law. It is regulation. It's federal regulation. There's a Massachusetts amendment to it. It is what we are compelled to comply with. It is what myself as a professional engineer and the professional engineers, if we don't comply with it, we could lose our license to practice. Not a big fan of that. I'm sure nobody would be well served by that. The city can jeopardize all future federal and state funding for highway construction if we don't comply with the manual. So when it comes to, there's the manual in its preface, they have several terms, shall, should, and may, and they're going to give you guidance, and they say you you shall do this. That's a regulation. You have no choice. You shall do this. But in certain situations, they might say, you should do this, and it's a good idea. You should consider it. And then you may do another thing altogether. So that, when it comes to posting a standard statutory speed limit sign, it says you shall not post them. So we are prohibited from posting the statutory speed limit. However, you're reminded as you come into the city from any direction, you can't get into the city of Beverly without being reminded the citywide speed limit is 25 miles an hour. So
there's no way at all, there's no other alternative way, a shall or a may or what? That
no, because you wouldn't post it. There is at the top on either side of the school, there's a school zone speed limit of 20 miles an hour when the children are present, so when school's in session. So, that is, a further reminder of that, when school's in session, there's a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit on either side of the schools. But so there are some speed limit signs up there, but they're relative to when school's in session. So.
And then I have one last question, which I know we've had several conversations. I just want to reiterate it. Woodland and Kernwood Heights have neighbors requesting speed humps. They compare it to what goes on in Salem, different areas. I will bring it to you again. I know the reasoning behind it, but I just want to kind of put it out there for those who are watching, kind of clear it and start with this is where it's at.
I know that speed humps are a popular item in some places, but if you notice, they're not in most places you go. They're being deployed in communities around us in ways that are just not really solving a problem, because they're on side streets. Like in this case here, if you're going to put them near, you don't have to go very far before you're at a stop sign. Well, that's your speed limiting device. You're stopping at that location. In this case here, we don't really have. Granted, the sergeant, he and I have talked, and we don't have a tremendous amount of data to play with here. He's done a lot of data collection, but it's not really. We would both be more comfortable. We would all be more comfortable if we had a lot more data to help us make informed decisions from. But the data we do have suggests that there isn't really much of a speeding problem here. So we don't. What would that solve? We got, as you said, the average speed. I know average is not much of a much of a bar, but 20 miles an hour. So the 85th percentile, which is a number that we do look to, is right around 25, and that's why the speed limit is set at 25. That's perfect. That's what we want to see. So really, in this case here, you're not really achieving anything by putting things like speed humps in the road. It's New England, too. I will admit that we really don't want to be having to deal with taking them up for most of the winter, which is when a lot of the school year is. We had previously put speed humps, it was a mess on Lothrop Street. They should have never gone there because you cannot do traffic calming like that on an artery with speed humps. It's just not safe. The amount of complaints we got from the immediate neighbors of their houses shaking, and every time a truck goes over it and the tailgate's slamming, and the amount of noise it generates in the neighborhood, it really makes life intolerable, in my opinion. And I don't think in this situation it's necessary or going to be all that effective, because the traffic speeds are already, except for some outliers. And as somebody who works in the roads all day, and I'm sure the police can attest to this, those outliers, there's almost nothing you can do to slow them down, because when we're working in the roadway with several workers, with police details, there's a certain element, that minor percentage, the 3, 4, 5% of people that don't slow down for anything because they're not paying attention. And they're not going to slow down for speed humps. They're not going to slow down for neck downs or chicanes or anything. They just don't slow down.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I think the good work the police department is doing is one of the best things, because, in my opinion, those distracted drivers are the ones that need to be reminded in a financial way.
Great.
So that's going to be very effective.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You want to keep it?
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else now? Sure. Chief Alasher.
So just a couple of things we're going to do. We have the traffic unit, but I've also been in contact with the major, the state police in Danvers. They have what's called a community action team. We're going to take those 5 troopers and bring them over with our community impact unit, with the traffic unit, selective dates, could be in the evening, could be in the mornings, weekends, and we're going to target the whole region. Again, a sea of blue lights will get into people's minds that they have to slow down. And what the mayor's talking about is an extra position. It takes us time to get a body through the academy, trained and everything else. So we're going to take some of that money that's available in overtime and start the project immediately about putting somebody over there to start working. So you're going to start to see immediate enforcement and increased enforcement, but it's not going to be regular. Weekends, evenings, days, we have to do that because if everyone knows we're out there at 8 o'clock in the morning, everyone behaves at 8 o'clock in the morning. So we're going to stagger our response to work, throughout the whole region.
Thanks, Chief. Yes, certainly we are going to do everything we can to make sure that there is consistently a concentration of enforcement, presence and enforcement. And as Chief said, it can't be the same time every day or people just know when to not worry, when to worry and when to not worry. It's got to be frequent enough and it's got to be unpredictable in terms of when. And, with the resources that are already being deployed and with anything more we can put to it, you've heard Commissioner Collins talk about just how many more cars are going through. We've seen some data. We'll try to get you the comparisons before and now. We recognize just how important it is to the neighborhoods that we be present and that, people who are trying to get where they're going keep being reminded that, that other people are living on those streets and in those neighborhoods or, walking through or biking through. So we'll keep doing everything we can to make sure there's a presence.
I know one thing you and I have talked about, and I want to really say to the people who are watching, and there are 3 major projects going on in Ryal side potentially the next however many years you want to put out there. We have the 2 bridges that we're going to be dealing with as well as the Bridge Street project. And I know you've already have your team, Ronnie and Jocelyn, working on a living document on the website. I believe it's under bridges that will keep people updated. I believe, and I know you and I agree and say it all the time, communication's key. And I know that there are several questions, FAQs going to be worked on, as well as updates from engineer. And I just want to remind people that as time goes on, even if you don't give out your email address, that it will be on the city's website specifically of where it will be located to get updates. This is not a project that's going to be done in 2 years, 3 years. We know that we have the Bridge Street project coming up in the next year, 2 years. We know, however, which bridge gets done first. I can tell you that it's continually advocated by the mayor as well as Senator Lovely and Representative Paracella to really, speed it up. And we don't have the answers right now. And as those answers do come forward to us, those will get out, I'm hoping, on the webpage. Just to, so like I said, we may not always necessarily have to have a meeting like this, but as long as you're able to see the information, as long as I'm here, as I'm elected, feel free to always call me. I can tell you that I continually bring it to the mayor's attention, as well as Senator Lovely and Representative Paracella, as well as Sergeant Henneberry. So don't feel that you can't ask any questions. Don't think that what your concern and problem is and might not be the people over on Woodland. It doesn't matter. It's still your concern and problem that's affecting you over up on Sunset Drive. Don't feel that you can't call us, because it's something we're going to be living for a long time with, and it's a nightmare no matter what we do. I mean, as much as we want to try to say there's an easy solution, there isn't an easy solution to this. I mean, Commissioner Collins attests, we got 12,000 cars on Elliott Street. We're seeing 2,800 cars going on Woodland Ave and Green Street. I mean, those are just crazy amounts of numbers. Just continually reach out to me or to the mayor's office or to Sergeant Henneberry if you need traffic data, or if you want to see what's going on with updates. Hopefully the website will be current in getting that information. It isn't all there yet. We're working on it. I'm working to get the mayor information. I'm working with some of the neighbors to get questions that have been asked throughout these last several months right now. If there's something that gets on there and you don't see it, call me or send an email to someone in the mayor's office and say, hey, can we get this question answered and put up on the website? Because if you're thinking and asking it, there are many other people in the neighborhood that are asking the same question.
Thanks, Counselor. Yes, as Counselor said, the FAQs will be up and able to be seen pretty soon. I know, Counselor, you've been feeding some of the more of the traffic questions into the mix, right? I mean, the MassDOT project manager had been answering some of the bridge questions, which we're still asking, right? I mean, we're hoping we'll have a lot more clarity from the upcoming meeting with MassDOT and VHB. But yeah, those questions, they'll be up and the answers, and we'll keep working on them. What you were speaking to just reminded me also, at the last meeting over at Ryal side, we told you that we were going to be briefing Senator Warren and Senator Markey's teams, and we did that shortly after that meeting. So they're now more up to speed. Congressman Moulton has had one of his key district staff, Kelly Bovio, in all of our conversations, and so they're up to speed. And as I said, the senators' offices are starting to, get to understand the project, the needs, and as we all get a better handle on just what MassDOT is going to put forward, then we'll know what to expect for for which agencies are going to need that kind of advocacy from the federal level. So it's all still moving, and we're all trying to make sure that the other piece to it is, as hard as these conversations about temporary bridge first or straight to permanent bridge at Hall Whitaker, we know that MassDOT, prior to having to close the Hall Whitaker, their plan all along was to rebuild the Kernwood first, to put the new Kernwood in first, because of the over 3,000 openings and closings a year, and their concerns about the ability of the existing Kernwood Bridge to continue to meet those needs. Now they've acknowledged and agreed that Hall Whitaker has to happen first, and we're in that conversation. Well, is it a temp to be followed by a permanent, or is it a permanent right away? They're saying it, and that's why I said the meeting that we have upcoming with them is really focused on that 8+ year timeline that they put in front of us, saying, if you're going to go straight to a permanent Hall Whitaker, we can't do it quicker than this. They're looking to design and permitting and how they interplay, and you have to get certain permitting before going to next steps on design. They're talking about statutory and regulatory required timelines. We're trying to dig into all those details and challenge them all and tug at them all and see what can be, if we can do better than that. And at the same time, they're trying to refine the repairs that they know they need to make to the Kernwood. And we're asking them, can you make enough repairs to the Kernwood to give us all the confidence that that'll continue to work through the whole time that we need for the Hall Whitaker? So these are the things that are on the table and to be kind of, and it goes back to all the input that we've been getting from you and your neighbors. And, we're not letting go of those debates and conversations with MassDOT until either we convince them or they convince us, or we all get to the same place that this is how it has to be, so let's go. We also know that we're all better served if we can pretty quickly at this point, right, get to that point, because they're moving on the temporary repairs to Kernwood in terms of getting things lined up, but we've got to get going with the permitting piece on either a temporary or a permanent at Hall Whitaker, and go from there. So that's why we've been pushing these conversations, and we're hopeful that coming out of that meeting next week, we'll have more to share. That's where we'll push some information out via the emails and via social media and the website. All right. Any last thoughts here? Any last questions right now? Okay. We appreciate you coming out tonight. Appreciate anybody who's watching live at home, and please share with your neighbors that this will be available to watch on BevCam as well. Thank you, BevCam. Everybody have a good night. Thanks.